What Milo wrote is if women have trouble being on the internet, they should just log off.
Just quit. Just yeah.
Cue hysteria over how mean he was to say that they should log off. Why should it be so difficult?
I can hear the screams from here. Reverberating through the space-time continuum. Ah! Can we log off the internet? I don't think we can.
Okay, that's another layer. That's definitely another layer.
Practically, I don't think it's possible. It's just not possible. We were talking about this the other day, and I said that I think men and women are using the internet for completely different reasons. So scanning over what Milo said in the article was great. You know, what was it? Boisterous and challenging, or confronting and autistic. Being that way online is a very different way to approach the technology than the reason that I think a lot of the women are doing it, that were angry at him for being told to log off. He's basically gone and asked women to deprive themselves of something that's upset them.
Fasting, but fasting from what? What is this internet that we need to fast from? I do think that what women's problem with logging off is a good key into what it is that we're trying to understand. It's like I don't. It's like, guys, you know, if you're listening and or have not been driven away by our cackling, how hard or difficult it is for you to log off. I mean, we've seen it in our various, you know, Telegram conversations that some guys seem to get just as caught up. The world of the internet interaction as a kind of, shall we say, drug?
I think that's fair to say.
And so you're saying that in Milo's article, he's pointing out that men, they love hazing each other. They're in this, as you say, boisterous, autistic, experimental. I mean, I just see it as a fencer you're bouting. We have to learn as fencers, as women, to deal with the reality of competition, losing. But there is a different kind of feel and dynamic to it. And what Milo seemed to be describing with the gamers and the problem with Gamergate, there were women involved in Gamergate that wanted to be playing the games too, but that they want to be in it for the rough and tumble of the interaction, whereas women want to be generically or getting some other kind of something out of being on the internet. But it can be equally difficult for both to fast from the internet. I mean, okay, so the men are all on porn. We're not talking about porn tonight, but I mean, that's another kind of addiction, obviously, to this kind of digital engagement.
Porn is an attention addiction. It's just not considered an attention addiction. Because most of what men would say about women being on the internet is that they're there to get attention.
These girls. The mean ones.
Yeah.
So this is another thing that Milo mentions in the article. I think maybe I got this from a different article that was linked in his Why Women Should Log Off, which is women are really nasty to each other. And that if you find often the pile-ons that people have experienced in the internet world have, you know, that women being, you know, feeling got at and being called names and shamed and degraded and so forth. It's other women doing it.
Yeah, it's girl on girl violence. It's not the boys. You've experienced it. I have too.
It's like women should log off because we're just being nasty to each other, and that's what the problem is.
No.
And I don't think we really want to go there, but it's on our minds because we're watching in our unauthorized mini community some bad feelings playing out. And you know, mean things are being said not on all sides in the same way. I think there's different levels of what's at stake. I mean, one's why is it so hard to log off? Why is it it's like something distressing and upsetting or even just fun is happening, and it's really, really hard to just not look, which is one aspect of it. And then there's the kind of engagement that people get involved in and not knowing how to deal with it. I mentioned that I've been kicked out of chats, Milo's, for example, several times. Actually, mainly Milo's. I mean, I did get kicked out of Owen's. Still wondering about that one. But the being kicked out of Milo's chat, it's actually on the blog. There's a number of posts from 3 years ago where I'm meditating on things like men and women's engagement there and the rules of the game and how men and women behave. But the main thing that I remember and recognize, and I don't think I've actually blogged about, is how much I cried when that happened. The thing that I noticed most was that you're cut off, right? And at first I was thinking that it was actually personal, the sort of feeling of being rejected by those particular people. But I've come to some understanding. I think it's simply addictive. I think you're cut off from your supply. And that's why you end up in tears. I mean, it's the same reason you end up crying because you didn't have your chocolate.
Yeah.
Flat out addiction. What happens when you're in the sort of state of scrolling through chats, and Telegram is powerful for this, right? Because you scroll through all the channels that you watch, and you scroll through the chats, and you look to see whether anybody's responded, and then you look over here to this other response, and of course you want a happy response to whatever it is you said. That makes you feel happy. But another response is also good, because that's a response, right? And there you're in, and you can sit down and not stand up for hours, being in that absorptive dream state. And I think therefore when people get kicked out, and I think this is playing out in the other chats and the other situations quite powerfully, when you get kicked out of something that you are, it doesn't, whether it's positive or negative, I'm not quite sure it completely matters. You are in it, right? It's all of your attention's focused into it, all of your engagement in it. And the ability of these online digital spaces to be moderated so that you are instantaneously cut off from this entire engagement that you were involved in, you burst into tears. I have. The place I understand this is, in fact, from my fencing, because the fencing is the same problem. When we bout in a tournament, first you do a round robin in a pool. From those bouts, get a seeding into the second stage of the event. The pool bout, you lose, you get another bout, although with a different person, and you sort of keep going. And it is fraught because you need a good seed for the elimination tree, but you still get to keep fencing. In the elimination tree, when you lose, you're done. You're out. Right. And presumably anybody who's competed in a elimination tree setting will understand this feeling. When you're out, you're out. You don't get to try again that day. You are finished. And then I started putting these two things together of the way I have reacted, it's on the blog, to losing in those elimination situations. And it's crashingly crushing, right? You don't get to start up again and redo or fix it, or no, you don't see these women for another 3 months or a year or something like that. It's done. Men, not so much, but absolutely every woman who has ever fenced has ended up in tears. Absolute guarantee.
Yeah, it's intense psychological pressure. It makes sense to me from the perspective that, well, I've had this experience as we've talked about, hiding my face and staying anonymous for as long as possible because I was having intense internet bouts with everybody. I knew that as soon as I lost my anonymity, it would change the engagement, because then someone would be fighting my face. Because no matter what happens with women, that aspect of it always comes in somehow, which is why when women get nasty with each other online, they always bring up another woman's looks, no matter what. It's, as you mentioned in the blog, you expect women to be fighting based on skill, knowledge, competency. Women don't fight like that.
Not at all.
They don't care about skill, even if they say they do, but they don't care about it. In general, this is a generalization. There are exceptions, but there are exceptions that prove the rule. And when women are put into that psychologically precarious mode where their skills are tested and then they're knocked out of those kinds of rounds, then the other side of the competitive nature of a woman sort of is there as well. So we fight ourselves in that way, and then we're fighting each other in that way. We can lose an internet argument, and I did as a guy, and no one cared. It was just like, oh, well, no worries. And then you join the argument again tomorrow, and you keep going. Things are a little bit different for females engaged in that kind of combat.
So this is indeed in my internet battles with my academic colleagues. They went for my face, absolutely, right? It's like they looked up pictures and started talking about how ugly I was. It was a guarantee. It's like, and they didn't want to engage with my scholarship. They didn't want to engage with my arguments. They didn't want to engage with, the actual thoughts. It was, she's nasty. We need to say things about her. But I think, so we're going to have to, we oscillate back and forth between the crying little girl and the mean girls, right? Because I think there's the internal effects of being cut off from whatever. And the thing is, I think for women, the social engagement is very important. I hadn't thought of this until just now. This is how I solved it in fencing, is that I told myself, you're there for the whole event, even when you get knocked out. Because the feeling that I had was, and this, I actually talking out loud right now, the feeling I had in the eliminations was, now I'm done. I'm cut out. I don't belong anymore. I have to leave, which was exactly wrong, in fact. That now, I might still actually get angry. I'm looking forward to this in April, going back to the tournament. Oh my gosh, great. You got, like I said, everybody has cried at some point. And the best thing that happened to me about a decade ago or so, before I really started winning and had my good, 6 or 7 years, I burst into tears at the end of because I'd done so badly and done stupid things. And I just sat down and cried. I was still there in the pod at the edge of the strip. And I just sat there and cried. And the other women, bless their hearts, came around and said, don't worry, it's just adrenaline. I'm like, oh my gosh, nice. What a gift. It's just the adrenaline. I just, it's like this surge of all of that thing that you'd been absolutely focused on. And you humiliate yourself because you made mistakes and you didn't think you should lose. There's all these layers of expectation and blame, and I looked bad. I think the I looked bad is also a problem, right? It's like I looked bad.
Yes.
And they just said, everybody, you're crying. Everybody does it. It's the adrenaline. And I'm like, thank you so much. Layers of when I learned this, it's like, when you get knocked out, go cry, whatever. Sometimes I've had to leave the event because I did so badly and I was so mad at myself. Other times, most of the time now, I say, okay, you're done fencing, now you're studying. And I go back and I watch the rest of the event. And that for me was the way of saying, you're still part of this regardless of when you're out. The event's not over until it's done, which is you're watching the final. Psychologically for me was incredibly important because it's saying I still am a part of this. I still belong. That I realized as a woman, for me, the hardest thing was feeling excluded. Yeah, now you all know how to get me. and that, of course, is the obverse of what the mean girl exercise is. It's making sure that you figure out who's in and who's out.
That's a woman's role, which is why when your friend says girls get off the internet, they're shrieking in terror. It's the edict to be exiled from the social realm. It's like deplatforming, asking someone to deplatform themselves.
So there's the fear of the ostracism, which we've all talked about a lot in the cancel culture, and it's like your voice is gone. But for women, it's the death, the social death is it's just crushing. It's cataclysmic, and yet it's hard for us being in this social environment where we can't use the other things that we're used to using as women. What you were saying, when we're just in the chat and you're in whatever avatar or character or a non-name you're using, theoretically you could be anything, right? You could be a dog, you could be a monkey, you could be a horse, you could be a man. But it is interesting to me, and I don't think, how soon did I do this, how hard it is for women to stay actually on, because they start realizing that they can't use all of their repertoire of influence just with their text. And so, I had one time I had to throw someone out of my chat because she just wouldn't stop posting videos of herself. And I'm just like, just stop it. No, you cannot do this in my chat. My chat is not for this. We're not talking to social gossip. We're not trying to, allure and seduce and play those games. And here we are on the internet doing streams.
I should have worn my burqa.
Yeah.